gayborhood. We hope.
Bushwick.
Right.
When Grindr was founded 16 years ago, it was groundbreaking for gay dating and hookup culture in the digital age.
When I first saw Hans's profile, he was the closest person, and it said that he was 100 or 50 so feet away.
Today, Grindr has nearly 15 million monthly active users and 1.2 million paying subscribers. Former CFO and current board advisor Vanna Krantz was part of a core team that took Grindr public in 2022.
It is a really amazing thing to have a company built by a gay founder.
Now, the company has an eye toward expansion, with plans to roll out an AI wingman in the next 2 years and the recent launch of telehealth service Woodwork. On this episode of Next to Lead, I sat down with Krantz, who has a diverse resume, first starting in traditional finance at PwC before moving into streaming platforms like Masterclass and Disney+. Freshly off her post, we wanted to know what's next for Krantz after Grindr.
Are you ready to nurture what's next? Reimagine industries to turn bold ambition into the beginning of everything. What's your next brilliant move? McKinsey & Company.
Vanna Krantz, former CFO and current board advisor at Grindr. Thank you so much for joining us. Delighted to have you.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's talk with the big news first. You recently announced plans to step down as Grindr CFO. You're still with the company. You're not holding the finance chief title. What drove that decision? Why now?
So it was always my dream to be a public company CFO. And when this opportunity came, it was almost too good to believe. And I the reason I say that is because obviously I have a finance lens, and I was fairly experienced learning from truly the best at Disney streaming services, so Disney Plus and ESPN Plus launch. And when I saw these financials, I literally went to the guys and said, "Is there a typo here? Like, I feel that this can't be right." And it was correct. So I was pinching myself when I had the opportunity to be the CFO.
What do you mean you said it was almost too good to be true?
The
Looking at
financials are quite impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And so the growth had been impressive from a revenue perspective, and even more so the EBITDA margins. And so the EBITDA margins at over 40% were unheard of in the industry. And I think I didn't understand it fully at the time, but I learned to understand it, was that there's a structural advantage in the business, and there continues to be. So I jumped at the opportunity, took it public, which was definitely a nail-biting experience, and then delivered 11 quarters of over 25% revenue growth and over 40% EBITDA margins, refinanced the debt, did an investor day, got analyst coverage, kind of did everything I wanted to do in that role. And I just have a lot of aspirations, and I want to do my next big thing. This was a big thing for me, and I feel particularly proud of a lot of aspects of it, and I'm ready to do something different.
I'm sure a decision like that doesn't come lightly. Walk us through the decision-making process.
So I was just laughing with you earlier that I don't feel like I'm that young.
And I said otherwise.
Yes.
For the record, let
Yeah.
the record state.
And sometimes I feel like a late bloomer. And then it was actually at this Fortune conference a few years ago that somebody said, or I read in one of the periodicals, that women really hit their stride over 50. And there's like a huge percentage of women that become part of the C-suite after 50. So I thought, oh, okay, so maybe I'm not as late a bloomer as I thought. That being said, I think there's just so much out there right now with AI and the next big wave of things that I would just love to be part of that in some way, if that's possible.
It's fascinating to me you said you see yourself as a late bloomer, because as an outsider looking in, you're objectively successful. I mean, we're here at Most Powerful Women Summit. We're bringing together C-suite leaders. CFO of Grindr held many other C-suite positions across big name companies. Why do you consider yourself a late bloomer? Is it in respective to other women you look up to?
I think it is. Like when I was, I remember Mary Meeker when I was really, I would say I was young, and she was a superstar and went on to become, huge. Sally Krawcheck, same thing, like a lot of amazing women. And so I feel like my trajectory was a little paced, let's call it, at the beginning. And and then was less paced. And so I think if I want to keep that pace going and not continue to just get comfortable, I had to make this decision.
You've helped scale and take public some of the most successful consumer platforms. We mentioned Disney Plus, obviously part of a public company. We think about Masterclass. Grindr is obviously a public company, and you were behind that. What, first of all, drew you to this particular company and community? And it almost seems like you kind of manifested your role at a public company, because it certainly wasn't public when you initially joined.
So I think if we say that Disney is a PG organization, I think that would be a fair statement. I mean, and if I would say that Grindr is closer to an X-rated organization, and maybe in the middle you have HBO, I definitely love the princesses. I love Walt Disney World. I love everything about Disney Plus. But Grindr has a unique culture and a group of people that I felt like, awakening for me. And I have children who are 22 and 25, and they said, wow, it just seems hard to believe you should be allowed to have this much fun at this age. And that's Grindr. So it wasn't that hard to decide.
You helped take Grindr public. I would assume that can be a quite grueling experience. Can you walk us through that experience? Some of the learnings about yourself, about leadership, about what it takes to take a company public.
One thing I did learn about myself was that I really am inspired and energized by beauty and excellence. And what I mean by that is doing something at the highest level you can do it, and doing almost anything you can to win. And it's a self-pride thing, a self like test thing, and also the group of people around you to go through an experience like that with a group of people is very binding. So yes, it's grueling, but I think you get the reward for that in the end. I can tell you that some of the best work friendships that I have are from the folks that I went through the Disney Plus launch with. So I think these things are real connections that you have with people. George Arison, the CEO of Grindr, took a risk on me. And
was it a risk?
Well, I hadn't been a proven public company CFO. So I would say typically when recruiters call, they would prefer to have someone who's already been a public company
But to
CFO.
say you have Disney Plus on your background.
I think it certainly helped. How about that? Yeah, it certainly helped.
You mentioned the fact that Grindr has delivered 11 or 12 consecutive quarters of growth. What's been the catalyst there? Talk to me about kind of like, growth, revenue generation, your growth strategies, certainly since you've been there in 2022.
So Grindr had been around for already 13 years when we took it public. So it wasn't a particularly new company, and it had incredible brand recognition, and it had global product market fit. So it had three elements that were, let's call it, foundational and important. In addition to that, it had engagement of almost 1 hour every day by their monthly active users, an hour a day, had 130 billion chats that were sent last year. So that gives you a sense of the engagement of the app. So to actually generate the revenue now, we developed a lower price point. So the original price point was $19.99 to get into the app. Because I had come from Disney, and Bob Iger had suggested a $6.99 opening price to make it available to everyone. That had really made a tremendous impact and a lot of growth at Disney. So we tried a $12.99 price point for a weekly. It was a massive success. So those were some of the early, let's call it early learnings, early big wins. I would call that a home run product, generated a lot of revenue, brought a lot of people in. I think, a phrase that George uses, that we wanted to meet people where they were. And so we got to do that. And that's part of the process. Second step was actually developing products that people felt compelled that they wanted to pay for, just adding on to the features.
Like what?
In sense of matching, like better matching, better scrolling, better just the people that come on your grid. So you're actually it's not a swiping, but you have a grid, just the grid to be more, let's call it personalized towards the person, such that they'd want to continue to watch more and more guys down the grid. So just like nothing revolutionary in the beginning. I would certainly say that that's not the case anymore, but in the beginning, I would say baby steps. we taught the analysts some of the terms, meaning we're early in our monetization journey. And we were early in our monetization journey. We were professionalizing an app that had been around for a long time, but maybe had not had the same level of professional management that understood how to monetize the app.
What is Grindr's mission from a cultural, philosophical standpoint, but also from like a KPI and success metric standpoint? What's the end goal for Grindr?
So Grindr cares a lot about its users. For sure, it is there for the community. It also is like going to the most popular bar in town. You have a better chance of meeting someone that you want to interact with if you go to a bar that's full as opposed to empty. So I'd say a KPI would be engagement, like I talked about, monthly active user growth. And now as we see the app, I would say evolving in other countries, if you think of potentially North America as being first on this wave or the curve of greater acceptance for the community, you could argue that other countries are also a fast follow. And if they're a fast follow, then there's a bit of a playbook that you can use. Of course, it needs to be changed a little for localization. I'm not suggesting it's an easy plug and play, but there are certainly elements that can be helpful in other growing populations.
I want to go back to this conversation about Grindr serving as kind of the bar in town, the hip bar in town, if you will. How do you balance growth and innovation without exploiting the very human desire for connection, which is why people use dating apps? You have to monetize that. You want to keep them engaged. I'm sure you also want them to hopefully find their partner. Where's the balance that you strike there?
I have to really hand it to our CEO, because if you look at our metrics of paid penetration, which would be the number of people that pay divided by the total population, we are below 10%. And that is well below most dating apps, well below. And truth is, we also have advertising revenue that is approximately 15% of our total revenue, which is a lot more than other apps. So they do see ads if they're free users, and they don't see ads if they're paid users. I think that it's important that Grindr is a place for the community, and therefore, yes, we appreciate our paid users very much. However, a free user is worth a lot too, because it allows for that connection in the marketplace. So we value both users, and we also do monetize through advertising, which helps.
You know, in the CFO role, you're ostensibly, as the name would suggest, focus on financial metrics, and kind of be a bit siloed. You worked at Disney Plus, as we said already, Masterclass, now Grindr, all apps. How much product knowledge, how much tech knowledge do you have to have? And how do you kind of work in tandem with the CEO and certainly the chief tech officer or chief innovation officer?
I think for somebody like me, I'm all in. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the job, and I find energizing about the job, is collaborating across the team and understanding, certainly at Grindr would be a great example, understanding what's important about the app and how users interact with the app. And a great example of that is at Disney Plus, once you were a user, there was a natural decay curve of how users turned off. The curve at Grindr is very different. And I was perplexed by that, because Grindr is a very financially successful app. So why is there so much churn? And the guys explained to me that there's a lot more in and out. So 76% of our new users coming in have already been a paid user before. So there's like a very different dynamic. And once you start really collaborating with around the exec table and beyond, you can learn how those, let's call it differences, make sense in the overall scheme of how you explain this to investors, right? Because part of the CFO role is certainly the investor engagement and getting them to understand how this app is a great value for them and why there might be a good investment opportunity for the investors. So I think for me, the CFO role is perfect because you get to align also with data science, which is becoming more and more important, certainly as we have more and more data on our users and how they go through the user journey. It's the perfect role for somebody like me who is analytical and wants to learn about the business, but clearly is finance first.
Match Group owns the bulk of your competitors. Was there ever talk of joining that suite, that cohort of dating apps?
Yeah. So we actually don't think of Match as our competitor.
We don't.
And I'll give you another example
Because
why
you're
I believe
careless.
that. The reason is because typically in streaming platforms, people have 3 to 4 streaming platforms. You probably have Hulu, you might have HBO, you might have Netflix. In dating apps, it's not entirely different. Many of our users are on Tinder as well. As long as we're first in wallet, meaning they would monetize with us first, meaning our bar is the most full, is the one that they would want to pay for, that's kind of the most important thing. So we don't really think of the Match Group as a competitor. Certainly it's in the same space, no doubt about it. But Grindr also has a large differentiator, which is it's a social messaging and networking app, because you don't have 130 billion chats a year unless it's being used for sense of community, which is also a huge, I would say, value proposition for the app.
You don't call it a dating app.
We call it a social messaging app. We monetize through dating, definitely. But I think if in our investor day, I think George and our product leader, AJ Balance, did a nice job of explaining how we see new verticals coming out, meaning we've already got one out. It's called Woodwork, a beautiful play on words, I'd say. But so that's ED medicine. And there's other things that are coming out that they've started to talk about. And that plays to, it's the global gayborhood in your pocket. It's a social messaging. It's a social networking. It's the place for the community. Yes, the vast majority of our monetization comes currently from dating and advertising, but that is really just the beginning.
Yeah. We are in DC, so I do want to talk about the current political climate because Grindr sits at the intersection of identity, of politics, of technology, certainly. How does the current political climate, especially around LGBTQ plus rights, impact the way you plan, the way you lead at Grindr?
That's a great question, and we've had a lot of discussions about it. And where we've landed is people come to Grindr for escape. They're coming for enjoyment, for fun. It's like going to the movies. Like, I'm not sure it is the place for opining on where the political climate is today. There's many other facets and avenues that people can use for that. That is that would probably take away from what I'd call the fun factor of Grindr, which is vital to what that business is.
Segue to that question. I mean, I understand, you want the fun element of Grindr, but I think increasingly, especially over the last 2 to 5 years, seeing companies speak out in movements that are politically charged. What role do you think a company like Grindr should play in movements of social or political tension, especially as you think about that community?
So I think our CEO, if you look on his LinkedIn, he does make he is grateful when things are more inviting and inclusive, and that's natural for people that are members of the community and people who want the best thing for everyone in the community. He's a father. He has 2 kids through surrogacy. He's married. Many people in the company are married, and naturally, they want the same rights for the community as every other person would expect. And so I think that's a common ground we can all agree with, and we try not to go too far out of that. But we certainly want fairness for all.
Yeah, I'm sure. I didn't realize until prepping for this interview just how global Grindr is. It seems as though the bulk of your users, do correct me if this is an erroneous statement, are outside of the US. Is that accurate?
You are 100%
Yeah.
correct. We actually shared that in one of our investor days because I think there was this misconception that most of our users are in the United States, and that is actually not true. 75% of our users are outside of North America. That was surprising even to me, I have to be honest, when I saw it. Clearly, we monetize a little bit better in the United States. But again, I would say having the benefit of a lot of different subscription apps, that is true for every subscription app, that Americans in general, or North Americans, tend to sign up for more subscription apps. So naturally, we would probably have more monetization. I think what it really tells you is it has incredible global product market fit. And it also will tell you that being part of the community is important to wherever they may live. The fact that our app it's in multiple languages for sure, but some of the translations aren't as perfect as they could be. But of course, we're working to improve those. But what I mean is, it is truly the heart of the community digitally, especially in countries where you may not feel as comfortable being out in the open just like that. So it plays a really important part in the community globally. And yes, there are 75% that are outside the United States.
How do you localize the app when you're working in a global context? Because to your point, there are some countries with far more restrictions on those who are members of the LGBTQIA plus community. How do you ensure that those cultural nuances are informing the platform and that you're protecting some of the users?
So protection is incredibly important. And if we see any kind of spikes in unusual behavior, we will literally shut it down because it could be extremely dangerous for our users. So we are constantly monitoring that. It's very important. But on the more fun side of just making the app really fun for all, we recognize that there's potentially an opportunity there to even be more localized in many of the places. We have taken on the Spanish language in a lot more ways, and we have a lot more, I would say, blogs about it and influencers. So we've made the push into what you could argue is our second most important language globally. But I think we also have started seeing some countries that are really coming up in terms of increase in monthly active users. And we're about to focus on just making sure their experience is as good as the guys in North America.
Grindr is inherently a data-rich platform. How are you leveraging that, especially in the age of AI?
Yep, we are very focused on that, no doubt about it. And I think what George brought to my attention and to our attention was that more and more people in the community want to get married, and they are getting married younger than they used to. And
really?
So, yeah, approximately 5 to 7 years younger. So I think that also is the natural evolution of acceptance, potentially, right? You probably don't have to wait as long to come out, and you can use Grindr, or you can use an app to get you what you are interested in. So you are right. We are very data rich, and the way that's helping now is that your screen just has potentially. It's a geo-based screen. So that screen shows you the 100 guys closest to you for free. But then the next guy could be someone that our language model would infer that would be more interesting to you. So that could be based on all your chats. So it's mining all your chats. We don't know who that, it's all anonymized, so we don't know. But it would look at all your chats and it would say, oh, well, Vanna tends to like people who wear a white shirt. So this guy has a white shirt in his picture, and maybe that would be more attractive to her. So you could argue it's unclear if all of our users want to be spending an hour on the app. Some of them might want to be, but some of them, they might say it's particularly inefficient. It's unclear to us. So I think we're going to provide that optionality to them to make it, let's say, a little more curated for them.
I want to go back to your career arc and just that C-suite readiness, because you've led through multiple industry transformations. You're also at PwC, I believe. So
Yes.
legacy finance, then streaming, then social tech. What are the through lines that have connected some of those chapters?
That's a great question. I had some, I think I was fortunate to work at first in financial services, where you could argue at that time, and maybe even now, I'm not sure anymore, but at that time, those were some fairly tough environments, and that forced you to see if you could sink or swim.
Tough how?
Demanding. Extremely demanding, I would say. Financial services, probably even still, is a pretty demanding environment in New York City. And it certainly would have been in 2000 when I was there. That, I think, gave me the confidence of suggesting that I could keep up with them. And when I was at PwC, I knew, I had just moved from Ottawa, Canada, and I had just moved to New York City. And I knew that I didn't know what I was talking about, because I was listening to the gentlemen around me and the women around me, and I was in the bullpen, and I thought, wow, I got a lot of work to do to meet this level. And I got there. And then going to Merrill Lynch, I went to Morgan Stanley, and then the same gentleman from Merrill Lynch went to Credit Suisse and called me. So that felt good, I would say. That felt good and gave me a nice grounding. Then I got a lucky break from this woman, Anna Petruno from Thomson Financial, who allowed me to be an SVP there. They bought Reuters within, probably 3 months. And another gentleman took an incredible risk on me, Chris Ahern, and said, I want her to be the divisional CFO for the media division at Reuters Media, which was a fairly prestigious role. I think having a few breaks is important. I think I can show a lot of passion, and hopefully I give people the sense that I'm here to get this done for you. And that has worked nicely for me. So I stayed at Thomson Reuters for 10 years. That's helped. That period of time was extremely long, and now seems even longer when you say it out loud, because that's an unusual period of time. But those were the years my kids were growing up. And it was a perfect balance for me while being at what I would call academy level finance orgs. There were some very, very strong people there that I learned a lot of the foundations from. And then when I left there to go to
You
Disney
learned a lot
streaming.
of the foundations as it pertains to just
Finance.
finance.
Yeah, financial acumen. What best in class means, like how you think about it. Because when you're in financial services in finance, it's a little back office. But when you're in Thomson Reuters finance, that organization was essentially run by finance. And that wasn't back office. And there was some very strong people I could learn from. And that was a great period of my career. Then going to Disney Plus, which was not Disney Plus at the moment. It was actually called BAMTech Media. Another gentleman took a risk on me, Michael Paul, who had come from Amazon Prime. And honestly, I think he taught me 50% of what I even know now in terms of the subscription business. A super kind and wonderful guy. And I think, a lot of women will say you need a mentor, or you need someone to take you under your wing, or you need someone. And I think having a bunch of people along the way that you also do a lot for is important.
It's interesting. You've characterized some of these jumps as lucky breaks. Has it really been that serendipitous, or have you been more strategic about it? Are you a careerist?
I'm not sure I was really that strategic.
You don't think so?
I think maybe in the last few, but not. I think BAMTech Media, that was a leap of faith. So I don't know if a leap of faith is the same as strategic. I would call it a leap of faith. I really liked Michael, and I really liked Kevin Marin. I love the people that I worked with a lot.
But were you coming in saying, I want to learn these skills, or I want more a leadership role that'll give me visibility? Were you thinking about it in that way?
No.
I
was thinking, this guy seems like a decent guy. And Disney Plus, I mean, if I told you anybody thought it was going to be as successful as it was, we hoped it was going to be. But did we know it was going to be? No. So it was a leap of faith. Yeah, a leap of faith. A leap of faith. So Michael Paul, the guy I was interviewing with, he was in a really important meeting, I guess, and he was late for my interview by well over an hour. And when he walked, and I remember texting my husband, and he said, "Just wait there. We're going to go to the Standard Hotel for a drink anyway. After, like, what are you going to do instead?" I'm like, "All right, fine." So I sat there. When he walked in, you know what I said? My God, I thought Obama was walking in. I can't imagine waiting for anyone except for Obama for an hour. And we started laughing, and then that was it. Like, we had a connection. And I think having a connection with someone is really important to being successful in the role. It starts with trust. So I would call it a leap of faith. Maybe not a lucky break, but a leap of faith. And then that turned into Disney Plus. And after that, I was getting some calls because Disney Plus was flying high, and I thought, this is my chance to really take the next step. So that one was a bit different, I would say.
Talk to me about how you lead. What kind of leader are you? How do you manage? What is your leadership strategy? How do you galvanize and motivate a team?
I think I'm like right there in the trenches with people often, and some people love that. And the other thing that I think is a trait of mine is that I really appreciate, and I almost want to say the word expect, that people want to do the best work of their careers, that this is their craft. This is who they are. This is important to them. And people who work with me that have that sort of fundamental, the way they go to work, we are just flying high. And that is why Disney was some of my best days, because there were so many people there like that it was a pleasure to be there. And I might not have been in that same place when I was at Thomson Reuters, because I was balancing, I would say, my home life and my work life. But when I was at Disney, I was 100% all in. Same thing at Masterclass. I still talk to the people literally often. And some of them, I didn't even see them in person because it was COVID when we were working together. People who are at that stage of their career, because everyone goes through different stages, myself included, probably are the best fit for my management style. I'd say I'm firm but fair. I really appreciate people who go the extra mile, and I'm willing to go the extra mile. So I also feel like we're in it together. A lot of these roles are also more ambiguous. The answer is not as clear. When you're doing due diligence on a potential acquisition, you have to be willing to look at the breadcrumbs and connect the dots and take the next step. So for me, that's really key. And I'm sure many leaders can be polarizing at times. And I use a lot of humor. And I don't even think I'm like purposely doing it. I just think that I find things a lot funnier than other people, because sometimes in corporate America, things are cuckoo crazy. And if you just call it out as cuckoo crazy and being like, okay, this is what we're going to do, I think it's also...
It lets some air out of the balloon.
Yeah. It's uniting too. We're all in this together. Like, I don't know. All right, let's do it.
Obviously, no career is without missteps. Any stumbles along the way that in hindsight proved to be instructive?
Well, I definitely said that I've taken some leaps of faith. And I think when you take a leap of faith, that doesn't always work 100% of the time. And it did not work for me either. I definitely have had a misstep or two. And the learning that I can have now from that, as I sit back and time has passed, is that I'm a person with conviction in what I say and what I believe. And that conviction is data-based, or I can remember patterns particularly well and connect the dots. And not everyone responds well to that if they're in the top job. If they're in the top job, and obviously I'm not, I'm the CFO, that can be threatening for people. And where I'm probably not, where I probably wasn't aware enough, was that recognize when people need to feel at ease and build the connection first and figure out a way of showing your view rather than quickly stating it. And so that's actually been a great lesson. The other thing that I've had for the last 5 years, which has been probably life-changing, I would say, is I've had a professional coach, and that professional coach has allowed me to see that actually how I react to things may not be in the standard bell curve or the mean of how many people would react to something. My ability for pain apparently is much higher than others.
A higher pain threshold?
Yes. And I don't get overly flustered by strong feedback to me or someone having a real sturdy point of view. I just don't. But apparently that is also not normal. So not normal, how about not typical? So I think the learnings is that if you're going to do leap of faith, which is what I would say I've done for my life, ensure you have that connection with the person. And I think when I was young, I'm going to say, I don't know, 35 maybe, someone said, could you just find a velvet glove instead of the boxing glove? Because the velvet glove is an important tool in the toolbox that I think took me a little longer to recognize how much I needed it, given my ability for withstanding pain.
I want to end here by looking to the future. What's next? Where do you go? What do you need to tick off?
What do I need to tick off? So I feel like we're on this wave of something pretty big and new out there. I mean, it's impossible not to be, well, for me, it's impossible not to be excited by it and feel that if I don't join it, I might regret it.
This wave being
AI. Just, and I'm not even saying that I'm going to be fortunate enough to have an opportunity to work in that space. I'm just saying I'm going to give it a shot. And I'd like to give it a shot. How about that? Or I'd like to also just widen myself out. I've been doing subscription businesses for the last couple of roles. Before that, I was doing enterprise SaaS. I think taking all of these learnings, being in big companies with, I would say, world-class processes and people, and being in smaller sort of founder-led and founder type and scrappy, gritty people, like I think I would like to just wrap it all up in one or two more roles from here.
Absolutely. Well, we will certainly be watching and chronicling it at Fortune. So, Vanna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun. Thanks so much.